Hello guys, and welcome back to our latest training seminar part today. And today we're going to be talking about core or core training, and what we term it as true core training, or as the tagline says, the infomercial said what? And the reason why we say that is, a lot of the health and fitness infomercials, I know that there's a lot, through the internet, through the television, that are on just fitness, a lot of different topics, but a large majority of the infomercials around today are on the core, what they term as the core. Targeting women having the sleek, small, flat, midsection, men having the six-pack abs, and what to do in order to accomplish that. And they'll term it as core. And so a lot of us tend to think of the core is that six-pack, that trim, tight, toned, flat abs. When in reality, that's kind of a false kind of illustration of what the core actually is. So what I wanted to do today is talk about the true core, what the core actually is, some of its functions, giving you a baseline to what the core is. And that, of course, in the entire training system, it's been either talk with a knowledgeable trainer in your gym or in your area, or let us at yourvirtualfitness.com coach you, and we'll show you the differences on how to put in today what I'm talking about. And of course I have notes written down today, as I usually do, so if I look away, that is me reading off my notes. So let's look at what the core actually is, what your core actually is. It is more than your stomach. The core is your lumbopelvic hip complex. And what lumbo, that's obviously the low back. Pelvic, we know where that is. The hips, and it's that entire chain. Just think about right around the tire area, right in your, from your groin into your mid-abdomen and all the way around to your back. That is the lumbopelvic hip complex, and it extends up your thoracic and cervical spine. So it's basically, the best way to look at your core is anything minus your limbs and your head. That is your core. It is your center of gravity. Your center of gravity sits from your neck, and you can't see it on me, but right down into your groin area. In between there, that is your core, front and back. So everything associated with that is included within your core. It's not just your abdomen. It's not just your stomach. And if we go just into the tire region, into the groin, low back region, hip area, the lumbopelvic hip complex, there are 29 muscles that come into or insert into that particular area. So it's not just the six-pack. The six-pack or the abdominal muscles. There's much more than that. There's much more to it than just what is external or what the infomercial will say. So that's one thing that we first want to identify. What is the core? And the core is everything minus your limbs, your legs, your arms, and your head. And that covers a very large area. It is your center of gravity. It is your center of balance. And we'll get into that just a minute, because it also ties back into what I was talking about the other day about balance and stabilization. And there's actually in your core two different parts to your core. And the two different parts are, number one, the stabilization system, or core stabilization, and core movement. Well, whenever you look at people getting their core defined, their abdominals defined, it always involves like sit-ups or knee lifts or back extensions or anything like that. Well, when you start looking at that, that is core movement. Whenever you're moving, the flexion and extension of your spine or the rotation of your spine, you're moving. However, that's only one component of your core. And the other component is core stabilization. In order to, I think we can all agree that, structurally, if your spine is in alignment, if your hips are in alignment, if all of that is in alignment, then you're going to have less risk of injury. You're going to be overall, more healthy. And so that's very important. Well, if the muscles that stabilize your spine are not strong enough, and stabilize your hips and that whole core area are not strong enough, then you're going to have dysfunctions within the core stabilization system, or within the structure of your spine and hips and pelvis and all that. So it is very, very important to look at core stabilization for, wanting to try to strengthen that. And core movement, if we're looking at core movement muscles, those are all your exterior muscles. Though that is the six-pack. That is what we consider the rectus abdominis, or the lower back muscles. But there's all of these internal muscles that sit underneath those movement muscles that are really responsible for stabilizing the spine, stabilizing the hips, stabilizing the pelvis, stabilizing the upper spine up into your neck. And so those are the true muscles that when you move, if the proper stabilization isn't there and you move, then all of those muscles, if not stable, have a tremendous amount more risk of injury because they're not stable. So from the side, if I just turn to the side here for a second, and let's say I have poor posture, and I sit like this, my head's like this, and I know we've seen a lot of people that have done that. Well, that's going to come from poor core stabilizing muscles. And if you move, if I'm just sitting here doing this and I start moving, then you can just imagine the increased risk of injury, where what we talk about is, sitting up, head back, being in a good position where the spine's in alignment, where, the hips, where there's no shifting of your hips, everything is nice and aligned. Where what causes that, your spine, everything to be in alignment, it goes back to originally what we're talking about, decreasing and identifying muscular imbalances, and then strengthening core stabilizing muscles. If your core stabilizing muscles are strong and stable, then when you go to move, you will be able to maintain that stability. Or if you put greater load under you, you'll be able to maintain that stability, and your reduce of injury is going to be less, and your performance or your fitness level is going to be higher. So, because it would be easy for me to stay in this posture just like this, like I'm doing right now, but then all of a sudden I put all these movements on it, and then I can't handle the core. So we want to make sure that under movement, under stress, under force, that you can maintain core stabilization. And then once you can maintain core stabilization, then core movement can come into play. And so let's get back to our original, when we originally talked about putting exercise together, about putting programs together, exercise design, program design. It all came back to the three phases. I got that wrong. Stability first, then strength, then power. Well, with your core, it's no different. So if we've already identified that there's two parts to your core, stabilization and movement. Stabilization obviously is stability. Movement is obviously strength. In our normal workouts, you can't do strength-oriented workouts until you first master the stabilization workouts. Stability comes before strength or movement. You have to be stable first and have less muscular imbalances, proper stability and balance, and then when you move, because your stabilization is good, then injury is reduced, performance is outputted greater, and you're able to move into that strength movement even more. Well, with your core, it's no different. Now that we've identified that there's two parts to your core, and that the internal part of your core is your core stabilization, the first step is to improve core stabilization. That is our first step. The analogy I always give is the biblical parable where we talk about building your house on a strong foundation. And our body is no different than that. If you have a weak core, weak foundation built on a rocky ground, and then you try building a house on that rocky foundation or weak foundation, the house is going to crumble. Your body, if you start doing too much, if you start doing too much movement, too much activity, produce too much load on that stabilization system that's weak, the body will break down, you'll have less performance, and it's eventually going to crumble. So the importance of having a foundation, a strong stabilization unit, stabilized core is very, very important. Now, you're like I said, working with a fitness professional, working with us, we will show you how to have a strong stabilized core. If you're looking for one quick tip, one thing that we always recommend to our clients, see if you can see my stomach here. Now, one thing that we always recommend to our clients is a lot of times people will do that, or they'll be in this position where stomach is drawn out like this. What we recommend is people taking their abdomen and drawing it in. If you notice that this is how people usually stand, we recommend taking your lower abdomen and drawing it up like this, and then maintaining that posture at all times, especially during exercise. And it all starts from right there. If you draw the abs in, you pull the abs up, and you're holding in this position where air is up into your lungs, it automatically pulls your spine and your head into proper alignment. And then from there, what you have to maintain is you have to make sure that you are maintaining that through exercise. When we do balance training with people, we tell them, because your core is your center of gravity, that the best way to have good balance is to draw the abs in, to continually hold this position, being able to breathe normally, hold this position, and then make sure that they're holding that position while they're exercising, because that is what's going to strengthen those internal stabilizing muscles. Because most people, when they exercise, they'll just use bad form and posture, whereas if you hold good posture by drawing in your abs and maintaining that position, by maintaining that position and then putting extra movement or extra force on your body and maintain that position, it's going to naturally strengthen and stabilize your core. That's just a very, a very simple example, but that is one very, very important thing. And then when working with a fitness professional or us, we will put you through actual stabilized core movements, and then once you're there, then you can move into more core, movement areas instead of just stabilization. And the three building blocks always are there first, as we were talking about, starting off with stabilized core movements to stabilize your core and your spine and your hips and up throughout your back and neck. Then once those stabilized exercises are there, then you can move into strength or core movement muscles. And then once you have proper stabilization and proper strength through movement in your core, then when you get into more power-oriented things, you're going to have the strength, you're going to have the stability to maintain all of that, and it's going to improve your performance or athletic ability or functionality or dynamic movements that you may do. And of course, with everything else, you need to progress properly. Go through the proper progressions, as we talked about in other segments, proper tempo, proper reps, proper everything, in which we can help you out with that. And you always want to go back and reintroduce or go back to stabilization training. Just because you moved into core movement or core power-oriented type of movements, you always have to go back and revisit stabilization training to make sure that you're either properly still stable enough, or maybe new types of stability things that is going to challenge you even more to make your core even more stable. So I hope that helps you out. I hope that helps you identify what core actually is and some of the baselines on that. And I hope that either one of your fitness professionals in your area or we can help you out. Hey guys, after I said goodbye, there's one thing I wanted to add really quick when we're talking about core. Having the appropriate core and having a stable core and good core stabilization will also greatly reduce the risk of injury. If you have hip problems, low back problems, shoulder problems, even lower body problems or neck problems, having a strong, stable core through movement and with excessive load will help greatly reduce the risk of injury. I just wanted to add that really quick and didn't want to cover over that, because that is one of the most important things about having a strong, stable core. It will reduce your risk of injury greatly in those areas. Thanks again for joining us. Have yourself a great day.
You feel that something's wrong.